Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the CKF, or Custom Knife Factory, and Peter Rassenti Satori 2.0. Beautiful. Another incredibly beautiful design by Mr. Peter Rassenti. I've said this many times. Anytime somebody says Peter Rassenti design, if I can't see it, my brain is instantly, I want to take a direct path to, I need to see it. I have almost every Peter Rassenti design that I've ever seen, I've just personally just fallen in love with. And you may or may not think exactly the same way as me, but that's how I think. And this is another great example of that. This is a beautiful knife, collaborative effort between Peter Rassenti and Custom Knife Factory, or CKF, out of Russia. So this is a ultra high-end production knife, I guess is what you could say. This knife is currently available at, well, at the time of this recording. But as far as right now when I'm recording this, you can pick this up at From Russia with Knives. It is very expensive. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys this right off the bat. This is a $640 knife. We're going to talk all about everything that went into this and my thoughts on it, of course. This knife was sent to me by the good, the great, the Nick Shabazz. Thank you so much, Nick. I don't know why you guys, if there's a small chance you're watching my channel and you've never heard of Nick Shabazz, well, then definitely go check him out. But likely, most of you know who Nick Shabazz is. So thank you so much, Nick. Also, thank you to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits, there's, of course, a link down in the description. You're supporting me in the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Okay, let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the Satori 2.0 is coming in at 7.5 inches, I think. Maybe just a hair longer. Let's call that 7.6 inches overall. Blade length is coming in at, well, gosh, if you want to measure from all the way back here, right, then you're looking at a 3.5 inch blade. If you want to measure from up there, behind the, you know, where the stop hits the frame, 3.25. But the cutting edge, I think, is right just a hair shy of 3.25, maybe a little closer to 3.125. So gonna be illegal in some places. Make sure you check your local laws before you pick this up. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. The Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? The Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7.25 inches overall. So you can see that this is not a huge knife, but it is also not a small knife. I would still consider this a full-size knife. I can definitely get a full purchase on it, but I think it's smaller than some people might have thought. You know, when I saw this, it was shortly after I handled the Snafu 2.0, and the Snafu is monstrous compared to this thing. And this is based on a custom design, and there was a version of this, I guess, that was larger. I honestly don't know the entire history of it, but yeah, it's nowhere near the same size as the CKF Snafu 2.0, absolutely, but it is still a full-size knife. How's the action of this guy? Well, in that case, it is very similar to the Snafu. It's completely and totally drop shut. If you like drop shuttiness to the point where it is dangerous, this is going to be your guy. It does not feel loose. It does not feel cheap. It feels in just the absolute pinnacle of drop shuttiness, which is present in, you know, the other CKF knives that I've handled, which actually have been a few now. Yeah, the action's amazing. The D10 is perfectly tuned. The flipper tab is a joy to use. Little bit of a poke where I feel like it's an optimal position for my finger. I want to do this. I want to do more of a push button, and it's kind of pokes right there, but I think maybe the flipper tab was designed so that you flip it like this. Whatever. Either way, it flips reliably. I mean, you know, it's tuned to perfection. It's exactly what you're going to expect. Actually, it's above and beyond even for the price range. You know, I've felt actions that you know, are exactly the same and appropriate for their price range, and they still cost substantially more than this. So, credit where it's due. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check here real quick. We'll get out my via bit selector and magnetic driver. These are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in my description under my tools. My flashlights are also down there. I believe the pivot is a T8, and that is the case. And there is nothing else, because guess what? This is an integral, or integral, however you like to say that. That's great. Actually, I think even the pocket clip screws are T8. Let's see if we can. Yeah, those are T8 too. The lock bar stabilizer screws a T6 though, but that's okay. You shouldn't really be messing with that, so that's fine. The nice thing about an integral knife is that you really just need to take the pivot. If you need to take it apart and clean it, or for whatever reason, you just take the pivot out and then you pull the blade out, right? It's easy, it's simple. That's fantastic. Got no issues with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So thickness up against like the Spyderco Para 3, you can see it's actually a little bit thinner than the Para 3, so that's nice. How about length and height this way up against two knives that are a bit awkward, the PM2 and Para 3. Of course, nobody ever complains about them, so about the same handle length as the PM2, perhaps a hair longer than the Para 3. Did I say PM2? It's a hair longer than the Para 3. It's definitely shorter than the PM2, and even including the flipper tab, it's nowhere near as tall as either of them, you know, so in the pocket, it's not really going to be a problem. The inside of the, let's see which of these lights is going to give me more light today. The inside of this, you can see, is not milled out. D4SV2 and FW3T, both in my description. Not milled out. And the blade stock thickness on this guy, let me get my calipers here real quick, it's not, actually, maybe it's thinner than I thought. Make sure we're zeroed out here before we do that. Blade stock thickness coming in at, okay, 145 thousandths. I think that swedge right there is throwing me off. 145 thousandths or so. So maybe about the same thickness as the Spyderco PM2 at maximum. It's not a huge knife. There's not a lot of materials, but there's also not milling in here. So different people are going to have different thoughts on, you know, the weight here. Weight is coming in at 4.09 ounces. For some people, if you do the ratio thing, you're going to think that's too much weight for the amount of blade you get. Some people will write at 4 ounces. They're going to be fine with that. For me, it's about carry profile. This fits right into my range for preferred weight, and the profile is, in my opinion, excellent. I can legally carry this here, and it does come out in and out of the pocket easily, so I don't have a problem with that. If you wear athletic shorts, skinny jeans, you know, tight pants, it's probably not going to be your cup of tea. If you've been carrying knives like this on the regular and you wear regular jeans, then this probably isn't going to be a problem. Let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. So this is titanium, and the blade steel is M390, which is, you know, about the most common type of knife in this tier of the knife world right now is a titanium frame lock running on bearings with a flipper tab using M390 steel, right? So that's more the same. Where the excess is, right? Because people always say, oh, I can get titanium and M390 for $150 from this company, right? So the materials that are included in the knife are obviously, you know, a big part of, you know, why people buy knives, right? Titanium is definitely premium. M390 is definitely premium. But in this price range, it has way more to do with how it is made, where it is made, how many processes are involved with the knife itself, how complicated the grind is, right? That has substantially more to do with, you know, the cost of the knife. Now, is that extra stuff of value to you? That is another question. If it is not, then you will likely not see that value in this knife. If you are somebody who does see value in that, then maybe this is going to mean something to you. It just depends on your perspective. That being said, the handle's pretty plain. The thing that I liked about the snafu is there was just excess going on. There were, you know, different contrasts. There was a pivot collar that was Timascus, right? There were some milling lines in there. This has an interesting, you know, how it sort of rises up right here. I mean, it's the idea here, of course, at least the way that I look at it, was to keep it nice and simple and then add all the craziness in the blade. Because this is the cool thing, you know, you show this knife to somebody, fold it up, you know, it's like, look, you know, it's a sort of just an all gray pocket knife, right? And I kind of like that monochromatic nature, you know, but it looks it's so unassuming, right? It's so simple. And then you fire that blade and it's like, Holy crap. That blade is super cool. I don't like recurves. I'm traditionally not a recurve person or a tanto person. We kind of have a recurve to kind of Japanese tanto thing going on here with a fuller. And then you have the satin finished in the heavy tumbling, creating that two-tone and that contrast. A lot going on with the blade. That blade, it seemingly, impossibly fits inside of the handle. It's just, there is so much more blade, both in just mass of the thing and in the presentation than you would expect fits inside that handle. And that's the cool factor here, right? There's a lot that goes into a blade like that. I imagine they do the flats by hand. And then the grind, this is a compound grind as far as I know. Is it hollow grind? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but we have two different grinds here, definitely. A much thicker front grind, and then the primary grind, drops a little, it gets a little bit thinner behind the edge. But there's a lot. That's the presentation factor there in the blade, and I do appreciate that. But the handle scales are very plain. Honestly, I would have liked to see something else happening here, whether they do like a faux bolster thing and they do some texturing and they shadow box it with this outer bevel or something. I don't know. I wanted to see something. When I handled this, that was my first thought was, it's nice that it is plain, but I kind of, with what this knife is and, what I've seen from Peter Rassenti, well, actually, Peter Rassenti does do traditionally more plain Jane looks. So, but what I've seen from Custom Knife Factory in the past with the 520, the 523, and the Snafu 2.0, it just made me want a little bit more, maybe just a pivot color and some little tiny, right? It would make me feel better about the money that I would have to spend on this. But for those of you who like a monochromatic look and something plain, which I traditionally do, you're going to like this. The corners are nicely knocked down. A little bit pokey. There's going to be areas, if you're really going to use this knife, there might be areas here or there that are going to, maybe cause a little bit of friction with your hands. Not really that big of a deal. It's not anything insane. In fact, I would say the Snafu 2.0 had many, much sharper areas. You can go back and watch that video if you want me to. Much sharper areas in this guy, so I don't really care. I love external stops. These external stops are not thumb studs. I'm going to do my best for the first time to actually use the studs. Oh, maybe I can get it. Oh, okay. You can do it, but that hurt. That definitely hurt. To me, there's no reason to use that. Just use the flipper tab. The flipper tab works way better. I like external stops. I like the idea of pressure being mitigated away from the pivot. If you do find yourself in a situation where you are, number one, going to use this knife, and number two, going to use it for something that is perhaps slightly outside of the realm of normal for a pocket knife, right? I also kind of like how it looks, right? I like the sound of the impact. A lot of times with knives that have external stops, there's a little bit more noise, a little bit more clickiness. I'm somebody who appreciates that, so that's great. You have the CKF logo right here. It says M390 and then Peter Rassenti's signature on the back. This is a numbered knife, number 135, but from what I understand, they are moving away from the whole limited thing where they only make so many and then they never make them again. Apparently they are, there are certain models that were going to be discontinued and then they have come out and done some more. So I hope to see that, but I imagine they will still have a numbered system. So there you go. No idea how many of these were actually made. I think there were 400 of the Snafu 2.0. I don't know if it's the same case with this guy. I love normally I'm not a two-tone blade type of person, but I think it's the geometry of this blade and just the look of it that I really like. The satin finishing, and then we've got the tumbling up here on the flats, the way that fuller runs out all the way to the spine. We do have edges that are nicely knocked down because of that tumbling. It all feels great. I just, the overall appearance of this blade, I'll accentuate it again. I love how this blade looks. It makes me want to see that blade on the Snafu. I love the Snafu blade, but this is just it's extra, the extra sauce. Man, that is cool. It's like a cross between, some gigantic, like machete and like a hatchet. I just love that grind. It's so cool. So classy cool. Really cool. Can I say cool again? It's so cool. Okay. So anyways, there's jimping up here and it absolutely is functional. This is an enlarged sharpening choil. It is definitely not a finger choil. It honestly could have been a full forward choil because those, those external stops are definitely in the cutting path. They could have really extended this area out. Cause I mean, if you're cutting it diagonally, then this is going to work. But if you're cutting straight down, this is as, this is where the material is going to need to be so it doesn't run into the stop. So this whole area could have been a forward choil. They didn't do it. Whatever. I mean, it bothers me a little bit. It's not really that big of a deal. Up here, definitely thick. Down here, it's relatively thin. Because of the grind, it's not going to be an amazing slicer. It's going to be a little bit tricky to sharpen, but let's be honest, that's probably not what people are not buying this, you know, assuming like this is going to just be the ultimate, you know, slicing machine for the most precision tasks, right? That is not why people buy these. People buy these for the presentation. They are incredibly well made and can absolutely be used continuously. But this is more presentation, a little bit less, you know, the ratio between presentation and function is just a little bit more lopsided here. But that's fine. I mean, a lot of us in this world appreciate stuff like that, especially when the item is still functional. So that's great. I like their choice of pivot. I like the color contrast between the black and the sort of concrete and then the satin. It's nice, you know. I love integrals. I love just seeing it just looks like a block of titanium, and that's what it was before they turned it into a knife. And integrals will cost more money than regular sandwich or pillar construction titanium frame locks. It's more expensive to get that milled exactly right, and it's also definitely more risky. They screw up the machining on this, right? They got one shot to get that whole block of titanium exactly right. They screw up on it, it's trash, right? Or used for something else maybe, but you have to get that right. I mean, the machining process for an integral knife or an integral frame is definitely more expensive, and that is a lot of it's where some of the extra funds go. If you're looking at this versus other titanium frame locks, a lot of that extra cost is going towards the fact that it is an integral. I actually appreciate simplicity on the spine here when we're looking at an integral. That's something that Peter Rassenti does really, really well. If you take a look at his custom knives, they all have the same sort of simplicity back here and maybe some jimping or whatever. These two holes will act as a place for you to attach a lanyard. You 7 or 8 people left in the world who like lanyards. I'm totally kidding, but there's not many people who like to do that. But it is there if you want to. The pocket clip, it's too basic for me. And it was kind of the same thing with the Snafu 2.0, the popsicle stick clip. I want something that looks more, you know, this is like, wow, and this is like, meh. You know, it looks like a cat's tail, you know. It works. It's titanium, right? The way that this area under here is shaped, it's going to be fairly easy to get it over the seam of your pocket. You might have to fight a little bit if you've got a thick pocket seam, but it does the job. It carries just fine. It's just, I flip that over and I'm like, another popsicle stick that's just kind of slightly, you know, it's okay. But this whole design is screaming for a more unique pocket clip. That's just my opinion there. It does have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop, so that's great. The knife is, of course, perfectly centered. I don't believe we're close to double clutch, but naturally, you just saw me transition and put my thumb in exactly the area where it would be organic. So if we move the lock bar, let me do that again because I actually repositioned my thumb right here. We're just barely on that. Yeah. Judging it now, the organic position for my thumb, there might be a little bit. If you're backed off a little bit, if you're back here, you're going to be okay. See how I moved it out of the way and it was already, but if you're up here and you move it, it's going to kick back. It's doing that naturally. So we're right on the line there. It would have been nice to have things positioned correctly so that the detent ball is always on the face of the blade so that we don't have to deal with that, because that's a recipe for dropping your knife or cutting yourself or both, right? But that's pretty minor. That's pretty nitpicky, so that's fine. No blade play, up, down, left, or right, and we are locking up at a perfectly acceptable 35% or so. That is great. All right, so little things that I can nitpick. The handle's very plain. It would have been nice to see some extra there, but that's okay. Some people like plain. This area right here, that should be a forward choil because there's too much, you know, this is all in the cutting path, right? The pocket clip could definitely be something cooler. It's functional. That's about it. And I guess the blade is going to be a little bit big for some people. The biggest problem here, I think, is the price. It's really expensive. Now, you are getting a knife where a lot goes into the machining, and, you know, of course, it's an integral. And truthfully, CKF and all the knives that I have handled from Custom Knife Factory have been above and beyond. And in a lot of ways, they really feel Shirogorov-y, except you don't pay as much money. Why is that? Because Shirogorov knives have much more of what they do. Almost everything of what they do is done in-house in Russia, whereas this guy has some things that are outsourced. Does that mean it should cost substantially less? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But your overall fit and finish and quality and feeling of action, just feeling like you pick this thing up and it just exudes quality, right? It is very similar to my experience with a Shirogorov. Some people are going to look at this and go, I wouldn't pay more than $300 for that. And some people are going to look at this and go, I think that's totally fair. To me, you know, this feels more like a $500, $550 mid-tech. And even then, I think I'd still like to see some more busyness going on to the handle. $640 is a lot of money. And, you know, people, I would say if you love how this grind looks, you've handled CKF knives in the past and you've experienced their quality, right? And you appreciate their quality, you're going to pick this up and you're going to love it. You're going to love this thing, right? But, you know, if you're somebody who really doesn't necessarily appreciate the excess value that, you know, that I feel like goes into an integral, or maybe you don't care as much about the blade, you're just viewing it for the materials, you know, and whatever, it's a knife that's a titanium frame lock with M390, then yeah, you're not going to see the value in that, right? Trying to look at it from both perspectives, it still feels a little bit overpriced to me, right? But it's eye of the beholder. This isn't a knife that I can recommend to everybody, mainly because it just is so expensive. You know, even I have a hard time recommending any knife to people that's over $300 or $400. So this is way over that line. But as far as a quality tool, yes, it is super high quality. I mean, as far as fit and finish goes, everything is just flawless. They just got it exactly right. A couple of design elements that bother me a little bit, and I just want some more business. Truthfully, ergonomically, this thing is comfortable, right? But I think I'd like just a slightly bigger version of it. I think I'd like one that was maybe like this. Get a little bit more handle room, and get a little bit more blade, which would make up for the fact that I want that forward choil, which would take away from some of the cutting edge. And I think this would just be about perfect. About maybe 8¼ inches on this guy. Surprise. I want it to be the same length as an XM18. That would have just nailed it for me. That and having the pocket clip be a different style and having some more busyness on the scales. And I think I would have been much more like, yeah, that feels a little bit better to me, you know. This is still excellent, though. Don't let me stop you from picking this up. If you want to pick this up, you're sure to be happy with it if you can understand, you know, some of the value that goes into stuff like that. But for everybody else, this is a fun thing to look at. It's just an interesting knife that's got some very beautiful features. Really, really cool, though. Nick, thank you again. Where did your sticker go? Oh, my goodness. Well, you got... Oh, there it is. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Nick Shabazz, for sending this guy my way. This was fun to look at. I'm glad I got the opportunity. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.